Um, I hope that wherever you are, the weather is cooperating. I know there have been some tornado warnings and weather advisories across the state. Um, so, I hope everyone is safe and in a good spot right now. We are going to go ahead and get started with our office hour today. We're going to be talking a bit about sustainability planning and provide you all with some tools to kind of do some self-assessment, as well as talk about different aspects that go into a sustainability plan. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Monique, who is on our technical assistance team. Thanks, Monique.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Dale mentioned during our office hour today, we will cover sustainability planning. We'll spend time defining what sustainability means, reviewing the framework components for sustainability planning, as well as introducing you all to the self assessment, and then we'll wrap with questions and next steps. I do apologize if I'm a little raspy, I am getting over a cold. But we want to start first by defining what is sustainability. So, sustainability is defined as programs or services continuing because they are valued. Sustainability does not necessarily mean that activities will continue in the same form as they were originally conceived, implemented, or funded. Activities, as you know, can evolve over time to adjust to changes in levels of support and the needs of the community. It is important to note that to create a shared understanding of what sustainability means with your team and other key stakeholders will make planning a little bit easier moving forward. So, what to sustain, deciding what to sustain as a team. So, essentially, we want to think about how sustainability is essential to continuing organizations' missions or purpose and does require thoughtful and purposeful timing and planning. While we are thinking about as a group and reflecting on what to sustain, we want to think about some questions to kind of get the conversation started. So, what we want to think about is what will be the most important aspects to sustain, what we can realistically sustain, and what actions we may need to take to be able to build solutions that will last. When we are making the decision on what to sustain, it also could be helpful to think through quite a few steps carefully before getting into action planning. So, the first step will be assessing your current objectives. And these can be objectives from your work plans that you already have, and just thinking through has any initiatives been successful in meeting this objective? If so, what has changed once it was implemented? And also, can this change be sustained? So thinking through further, which part of your project has the most momentum, what kind of needs more help moving its work forward, and then who has been key in the support of those initiatives. We can also assess the possibility of sustaining those objectives that does have that momentum. So that's kind of something we could think through first. Will be most important to achieve it and keep going. Again, what has already been sustained, what you should and could consider that may need more work in order to move towards sustaining. And then again, what partners or key players are involved in the efforts. So again, thinking through those partnerships and those initiatives of what you can start thinking that you want to might possibly move forward or keep that momentum going. Other steps will be assessing possibilities for funding that are realistic. So, thinking about any partners that may have funding or other resources that you could address to help move some of those high priority objectives forward. Do we have funding diversification currently? And are there any other grant opportunities to explore? So, as you know, funding resources may change. So, it is important to help think about other opportunities to help support your initiatives. And then finally, once we do think through as a team all of those steps, we can begin with developing a sustainability plan. So I'll hand it over next to Lindsay to cover the actual framework components of the plan as well as the self assessment.
I'm muted, but thank you. So I am back. I will say that it just got very dark here weather-wise. So if I do flash out, that is why, and I will be back as soon as I can. So the sustainability framework components. So we're going to talk through different elements. So the research that we've done in trying to put together this presentation for you all and things to consider, beyond just basic funding diversification in terms of sustainability, we have seen that there are several components that are pretty essential to consider while your organizations and your councils are thinking through developing your sustainability plan and considering. And so what we're going to ask is ultimately after this, we're going to talk through how your councils can sort of assess where you are in terms of these different components. And then we'll have you all complete a self-assessment about these different components and then return it to us, and it can sort of serve as a baseline moving forward. So one of the components is really considering and thinking about your strategic vision as a council. So one example of that would be, is there a clearly defined vision? Is everyone on board with this vision? And are the activities that your council is doing, are they connected to the vision that you all sort of are on board for? And this will help make sure that your council is grounded moving forward with that sort of shared understanding of the vision. The second piece is this collaboration. So who is included? Is the planning being done just by a group of people and it's very siloed, just the leadership team? Are the community members involved? Who's really included in this planning and implementation moving forward? And so that's something to think through too, as your organization is starting to develop a plan for sustainability and thinking about sustainability, is who is being brought to the table to participate in these discussions. And then collaboration with the activities that you all are working on. So a lot of you are really very skilled at engaging partners in your community. And so thinking about what partners are really going to be key in furthering these activities that we want to move forward into the future. Leadership, thinking through, do our leaders, are they really on board with the vision, and are they inspiring others to achieve the shared vision through activities? Are the leaders sort of leveraging their influence and resources to move our activities forward? So these are sort of all key questions for those three components. And there are more. So, okay. Another one is, let me open this up, relevancy and practicality. So is the approach that is taken based on the data? Is it practical? Is it based on the needs, the unique needs of your community? So thinking through, what activities are we choosing to move forward and sustain? And are those, driven by the data that we've taken such meticulous care to collect? Is that being informed by what we've learned? Evaluation and return on investment. So is the council at a point where we're evaluating the work that we've been doing so far? So it's been a long journey, and you all have accomplished amazing things together. Are they being measured? How are we assessing the impacts of the work that we're doing? And then that leads into the communication, is how is that information being shared out, like internally amongst the council, as well as through to the community? And are there channels that are formed for doing that, like formal and informal channels? So this is the last slide for the components. And the next one will sort of overview is efficiency and effectiveness. So does the council, is it drawing from and contributing to existing community resources? So we'll ask, again, there will be a self-assessment and you'll see different indicators, and you'll be able to select and say, how efficient and effective are we being and tapping into those existing community resources? For capacity, how well equipped is our council, is our staff to continue working on these activities that we've selected to move forward? What training might be involved to build capacity or required to build capacity? And then finally, thinking about funding diversification. Where are the funding sources? So we know that the funding from this particular grant is sort of eventually drawing to a close, and it definitely has gotten less over time. So how can we diversify our funding source to really sustain our activities moving forward? What sort of different types of funding could we consider to support those activities that our council has prioritized as being really important? You know, that could be like events, different scholarships, different sorts of grant funding, other types of in-kind contributions. So really being creative and thinking about once your council sort of honed in on the activities that you're really wanting to sustain and move forward, what sorts of funding are out there to support that? So I want to pause and see if there are any initial questions. Pansela?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I came on late, so I missed the first half of whatever was presented. Would there be like a much deeper, like on these points, a much deeper strategy conversation around those different buckets that you displayed? That would be really helpful to just kind of take a deeper
Yeah,
dive
that's a
in that.
great question, Pansela. So this is definitely meant to be just a general overview of the components. And so what's going to happen next, and to be continued here, we are going to be providing you all with a sustainability self-assessment. And I'm sort of going to walk you through the what it looks like. And underneath each of those components are different descriptors. And so those descriptors will sort of provide a base for which you can assess where the council is at, and like, oh, this one feels like it fits with where we're sitting right now. And then you would select that particular like level of where you're at. And it's sort of a really good, it's going to be serving as a baseline for you. So once you'll be able to take some time and like read through and process that. And then we can follow up. Definitely there'll be a follow-up session to this in June. So this is sort of our part one of our sustainability discussion. So I'm going to move forward into the sustainability self-assessment. And so we'll be sending you in the follow-up materials a self-assessment tool. And so everyone will be requested to complete this self-assessment, one per council. And then it will be emailed back to Danielle and myself sort of to take a look, and we can see where the council is sitting. It's sort of like a baseline assessment for where the council is in thinking about sustainability. And so some ways that it can be really useful, the self-assessment to you all, is to kind of, like I said, serve as a baseline and capture the general level of functioning related to the sustainability framework. It sort of can help measure what activities or capacities would show that you're improving in these different areas. So this is where we're sitting. This is what sort of improvement would look like along the spectrum. And then it can help identify what are some areas where we're really strong, what are some areas where there's some challenges that we might need to focus on in the upcoming months. So again, like serving as a baseline. And then this is sort of the pre-work before we want to start sitting down and making a sustainability, like an official sustainability plan. It can be used to help really hone in on what the council would like to focus on moving forward. And really it's like, oh, you know, now I'm looking at this, I really feel like we need a formalized communication plan. Or now that I'm looking at this, like I really see that we need to build, you know, some capacity or really center around our vision. So it's information for you all and information for us so that we can see, oh, maybe in the next coming year, we can focus some of our learnings and activities around these particular areas. So that's how it's going to be used moving forward. So this is sort of going to be the rating scale. So when you receive the self-assessment, those are the sort of the levels. And this was adapted, the self-assessment was adapted by the Georgia Health Policy Center, who did a lot of research into what sustained grant-funded programs over time, specifically in rural communities. But I think it's very comprehensive and really good indicators that we can use to adapt to our purposes as well. I know we're not all in rural communities, but it's definitely a very comprehensive tool that we wanted to adapt for you all. And so this is the scoring key. So the level of pre-awareness is sort of basic level. We're not, if you look at a category and you're like, you know what, we haven't even started thinking about this. We're not really aware of this element and its relationship to sustainability. So that would be like the very basic level. Awareness would be, we're sort of aware that this is important, but we don't really have a lot of capacity right now to address this issue. So it's, we know it's important. We've kind of put it on the back burner. Interaction would be, we're really aware and we've started doing some activities into addressing this element, and there's some impact that we're starting to see. So we're starting to make moves here, is what interaction is. And mastery means, we're very capable in this area and we could even serve as a model for others. So that's sort of the ranking scale when you look through the different categories, and your council will decide you'll have to decide how you want to collect information from your council members or your leadership team. Ultimately, we're going to want one combined document per council, but just so you know that that's sort of what the rating scale is. This is an example of what the tool, the self-assessment tool, will look like. This is for the component of strategic vision. And you can see in this first column, there's information about sort of like key elements or pieces that you'll rank yourselves on. So the council, for example, has a clearly defined vision for what it hopes to achieve. So a pre-awareness rating would mean that the council views all activities as short-term in nature. You're not really connecting that piece to the long-term. A mastery might look like the council views the work as part of a long-term approach for systemic change. For one down here, let's say, all activities are aligned with the vision. So pre-awareness might mean they're not defined or implemented in reference to the vision, whereas mastery would be all activities contribute to fulfilling a long-term strategic vision. So whoever you all decide is appropriate to complete this form and be a part of this conversation would take part in sort of discussing this. I think one of the recommended approaches that, I was thinking through is that perhaps, I know a lot of you maybe have steering committees or you have sort of co-chairs or people that sort of really are the team and like driving the movement forward. Perhaps they could complete this individually and then come together for a discussion. And then if there's any areas of disagreement, you could all sort of work that out and agree on a score. For this, we'll send you an electronic document, so you could just highlight the one that you've chosen. However, that makes the most sense for you, as long as we can see which one you've all selected for each piece. I want to pause there and see, because this is sort of the task that we're asking you to complete. Are there any questions about, how I've described it or anything that seems unclear?
Yeah, I got a lot of questions. So
Okay.
I think about when we talk about a self-assessment, so there's a collective, but then is there so I'm thinking out loud. So I'm thinking that I would like to see the whole assessment, like how that is presented. And I think, and to Calvin's on here, so I'm going to direct this to him as well. But I think having each person, I think there's like a couple of steps here. I think there's an individual assessment. Maybe does the Georgia Health Policy Council Center have an individual? I feel like there's an individual first, which we probably could do now, which I think is important in terms of this, in terms of their role in thinking about sustainability or long-term revision, or however, given their experience. And then the second part is the assessment that everyone answers the same questions. So I feel like there's two, because I look at the question like pre-awareness, I can see it could be all over the place, given the individuals who are on the council. And it could be a lot. So I feel like there has to be a pre thing first as an individual, so we can so they can actually, assess themselves, before we get to this. Because I feel like this could be a little disillusioned for some people because as a collective. So I feel like there's got to be this nuance between the two so that we can actually get to the same place. I'm just thinking out loud, and that's just how I'm thinking it's got to be like a pre-thing first with the individuals, because I feel like, and then we can have a conversation with the results after they take the self-assessment as a collective, and they have a conversation about it, and then present the single tool to you. But I feel like there's these steps I'm feeling like that has to happen, given where the council members are and where they are in their level. So That's me thinking out loud. That's all.
No, I think that's a good noting, and I think that was something that, you know, we think could be definitely an approach if individuals are like, okay, these are the folks that really need to be a part of this conversation, and we want them to take this tool from their perspective, or like this assessment, and then we could come together in a meeting and discuss like, hey, where are you thinking? Where am I thinking? And then, especially if you're finding, because there may be some components where everyone's on the same page, and that's awesome and moving forward. And then there may be somewhere you're on very different pages. And so people could, you know, have that discussion and like, why did you vote that we're at pre-awareness? What's going on
Right,
here?
yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
well, I thought we were at interaction and this is why. So maybe, I think planning to have that time for discussion will be important. So yeah, I agree with that.
As Panzella with the group that we.
Well, Patty, we can barely hear you, Patty.
Sorry, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
I'm kind of following along the same lines as Panzella. With our council members, I can see us being very divergent in responses to questions. So I think that everyone needs the opportunity to have the questionnaire, review it as an individual, and then come back and we can have a conversation and say, okay, we're good to go on these points, but we're really in different places in these. And why do we have these different feelings as to why we're here in some instances and here in others? I know everybody has their own take on the work we've been doing and maybe where we should be headed. And I think that knowing those differences is probably very, very key in trying to determine how to sustain the programming that we would like to sustain in the community.
Yes.
I see your hand up, Calvin. It's been up for. Did you want to add something?
Yes, I was kind of like in concurrence with what has already been said, with the thought in mind that it helps to develop council members as well. So a lot of times where we see that we may be a lot further ahead. And so because of like such things as a sustainability barrier, you know, we are reluctant. When I say sustainability barrier, it could be finances. Everybody thinking where the funding is going to come from. And so like that worry and that distractions prevent a person from actually seeing the vision in its true place. You know what I mean? So if individually we were able to assess where individuals were that are part of the council, and then we have a collective conversation, I think then we can bring the chairs or the co-chairs and we have an overall, you know what I'm saying, view of, you know, what sustainability look like from our council perspective, if you will. Thank
Yeah, I think those are excellent points. And we want, I mean, that's one of the pieces, like the collaboration, who's a part of these conversations and how are we communicating? And so, you know, I think for us too, like we want to make, you know, have this tool and have this be an end product that meets your needs. So, you know, I mean, and Danielle and I are like privately chatting over here. It's like, oh, we need more time to have them think it through. So I think, you know, this is really useful, like feedback for us. So I definitely appreciate that. Yeah, Shoni.
Also, I kind of had my wheels spinning too. For our Health Equity Council in Muskegon, we did not do a lot of programming for year 1 and year 2. We did a lot of community workshops and events, and then we did a very good job with our mini grants for our BIPOC population. But now I am shifting more focus onto aligning program with our mission and vision. So like I get anxiety when we talk about sustainability, because if we go to apply for another state or federal grant, that's probably not gonna be something that they allow, like to continue the mini grant process, because I haven't seen that. NPHI is so innovative with that process, it's just hard to think about that. So I probably am gonna reach out to Danielle to do a one-on-one with her, just because my brain is starting to shift over into programming, because we have done a lot of workshops and events, and I don't know how that looks to funders for a new org.
Thank you. Patty?
I just have a question in terms of what the format of the assessment that you're going to send us is going to look like. And is that format something that, if we're going to try to distribute it to our council members for individual information, is it something that we'll be able to easily dump into like a Google form or something like that?
Yeah, so the format will be a Word document, so that they can easily, you can share it out, you can print it for them. People can highlight it, you can do, I find that that's kind of easy. So that we wanted you all to be able to like type into it and, easily access it. So that was the form. Do you think that will work, Patty? Okay.
I think that'll be great, as long as we're able to access it and disseminate it in a way that works for our council. I think that's great.
And Monique just popped it into the chat for you
Yeah.
all too. So, and we will send it with the follow-up materials as well. We're also going to we're recording the session, and then this will be distributed for, for us to watch again. You'll have access to the PowerPoint. We're also thinking through maybe now like doing little mini sessions on each component, so that if the people are particularly wanting to ask questions about them, or we can have additional details, we'll do that. So I think that will be, we're tweaking this right now based on your feedback. So we definitely want, again, like this to be useful to you all. And we're here for your comments. So please keep them coming.
I just wanted to add in, I think a lot of the feedback that everyone is sharing is really important. And, we think a lot around kind of the tools and assessments we make, trying to be a little bit mindful of the different types of programming that y'all have done with your councils. And I think what you all are sharing is really critical in us trying to create a sustainability tool that will work for you all. And yeah, given the feedback, we're, like Lindsay said, I think we'll have some additional sessions, but we'll also probably want to dedicate some of your future check-ins to talking more about these different components of sustainability, just to hear more of your thoughts, both in office hours and in some of those one-on-one sessions, so that we can, try to think a lot about how to make the work that you're doing accessible for future funding opportunities.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to flip through. So this was just another example. But again, you'll be able to see this. You'll be able to read through it in the materials. This is just the section about collaboration and the different sort of indicators of sort of like progress moving forward, that you'll be able to sort of think through and reflect on, the different components. And then as a council, again, you'll determine where you feel like you currently are. But again, I think we'll have more opportunities to talk through each piece, and we'll do some adjustments based on our conversations today. So talked about questions, and I do want to say, I am going to pause for questions. This is going to be adjusted. So, oops, I'm sorry. We will do kind of like a TBD for completion based on the comments and the feedback, and we'll let you know when sort of the official deadline is. I think Danielle and her team and my team are going to get together and like think through a more structured outline for how we can offer the sort of the mini sessions about each component, and then we'll follow up with you all about that, and then that will help us to inform like a more final deadline. So you can ignore that, and I'll change it before I share it out with you. So I would say the ask for us on your end is look through the tool, reach out to us with questions and ideas. And if there's like, this would be useful to us, or like feedback, so we want to hear from you. And then we will share sort of an updated plan with you all moving forward. I do have some resources here that I think might be useful as you all start to sort of consider and think through sustainability. So this one down here, the last bullet point, was we modified their self-assessment tool just a little bit to sort of better align with the councils. But they also have different, like a whole page about sustainability. The community toolbox also has quite a bit of resources related to sustainability. So that could be something y'all could check out. And then the CDC has a sustainability planning guide for healthy communities. And that's pretty lengthy, like PDF. But so these are sort of some key resources that we thought at least would give you all a place to start. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see your faces. What questions are coming up for you?
Well, thank you. I think it's easing my anxiety a little bit. I feel like I'm charting out a plan. Before I was like, oh my God. But I
Oh,
feel
good.
like I feel a little like there's a pathway here.
Good. I'm glad.
So I just want to make a statement, not so much of a question. I don't want us to undervalue the importance of what it is that we're doing. Um, I'm witnessing our community members becoming leaders and beginning to understand that process. But on the other hand, because there's two things happening, we're looking at what our traditional leaders, our academic leaders, we're looking at them learning from our experienced leaders, and that sort of thing, kind of that intersectionality kind of working. So I want us to understand that it is a complicated process, and it isn't something that we're going to ride to overnight, but it is happening. And I see a bigger picture and the vision. I see us like actually tackling this issue. So I thank all of us who are here for the support.
Thank you for that, Calvin. That is really exciting to, every time I do a check-in with your team, like hearing the leadership and the growth of the community is very like encouraging and exciting. So I'm glad that you're here and are able to contribute to this. So thank you. Other questions or thoughts?
I just dropped it in the chat, but it's just, I really want to encourage folks to ask questions or share your feedback when you take a look at the original self-assessment, because that's really going to allow us to strengthen what we can provide in terms of support, and also shape how we will design these future sessions that we're going to have. So, already based on what you've shared, we know that we'll want to talk more about the components of sustainability with you all, and how to frame those conversations both with partners and community members. So the more insight we have into how things function for you all, how your values show up in the room, and how you want to sustain those pieces will help us to, create something that's more useful to you all.
I also wanted to pause. I know we have some time left, and one of the things that I was wondering about as I was putting this together, because I know there are some of you that are already working on sustainability with your councils. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing some of those ideas or activities with the rest of the group to sort of get our, folks thinking about, oh, what might you be able to do, or what are we doing? What are others doing?
I'm sorry, Lindsay, I had missed part of the question.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what are folks doing that they already have identified as weight efforts for sustainability with their councils?
So in Muskegon, I encourage our council group to have the autonomy to have that conversation. It is several barriers though to sustainability. We're not a standalone 501c3, so we talked about how much capacity is going to go into sustainability and the lift that the current fiduciary has, which is our nonprofit. So we just trying to be conscientious of all the moving parts because it is a lot that goes into sustainability and the future success of like coalitions and small groups, no matter how you categorize yourself. I just feel overwhelmed. Like honestly, with the moving pieces, of course, our supervisors are in New Orleans right now, so I can't get on Sam or Hillary nerves, but I'm definitely probably to take a step back and have a conversation with Danielle and Hillary, just because with the group, we have conversations and they kind of don't get to an ending place. So we're kind of like talking in circles at this point. But I think it's just overwhelmed because there's so many pieces that go into a good sustainability plan, and having a non-profit or coalition that's going to be in the community for um just the longevity of it is kind of overwhelming.
Thank you for sharing, Shoni. Patty?
Our council has spent a lot of this second go round of the grant cycle working with community health workers. So we have trained a number of community health workers, and that's one of the ways that we're hoping that we can embed ourselves into the communities that we're trying to serve. Part of the problems that we're seeing in the Macomb County area, and I'm sure it's being seen everywhere, is that there is a lot of mistrust of the system and medical individuals and so forth. And we felt that if you had a community health worker that works within your church or your school group or whatever your area is and is part of the community, that would be a way in which we could sustain some of the work that we are doing. We haven't really come up with a great plan as to how we're going to keep the movement going, but we have seen some really great success with having our community health workers at some of the events that we've held. So I think we've got kind of at least a foot in the pond, so to speak, but you know, at least that's a start.
Thank you, Patty. Calvin?
So I think that all along we came into it with the idea of how to sustain what it is that we were doing and how to convey that message to the community. And so how we began the process, we selected the community members, or Moses selected the community members. I just so happened to be one of the members, right? And they acknowledged the leadership that was naturally there, the genius that was naturally there. Pushing, confirming, supporting, you know what I'm saying? Step up into the leadership position, step into the leadership role. Then once we get into the leadership role, we do co-chairs. That's kind of like, to be quite honest with you, the co-chair sort of thing, it kind of gives you like a balance, because it's two like different learnings that is happening, but you have somebody to count on. But you also want to have someone who's going to connect with the council at large, through like one-on-one conversations. So what Shoni is saying is real. Like we have these, these conversations that are just all over the place. But know what ends them? When you call someone afterwards. You know what I'm saying? When you build relationship and you develop relationship with them and you let them know that their voice is heard and that we're not here for ourselves per se, we're here on behalf of the voices of the people in our community. So it's a much different thing. So there's a learning that we have to have, of course, also. So those were the sort of sustainability things that we did, centralizing the message, you know what I'm saying? Creating a clear vision, and then also Poncilla has been, she's been tooth to nail about this. Let the leaders lead, they know. And so I'm telling you, as a community leader, it's hard to step into that when you've been, that trauma that you've been subjected to and getting over that. And so recognizing that we have to get over that, and it's us that we need in order to get over that. I think that what she's identified, and now we can look at other things like funding issues. So you know that there's most of our leaders have a lot of connection with various different people that would fund equity. You know what I mean? There's plenty of money out here. It's organizing, you know what I'm saying, and making sure that we are all on the same page and delivering the same message and connecting with those of us that are doing the same thing. So with that's something that I think that we have always been developing, understanding that we're on the same message. The message is about equity, not as an individual, although individually bring something that is genius. Like, how do we utilize our genius to manifest genius, if you will? Just encouraging and supporting and having them one-on-one conversations, and then not personal. We let people say what they gotta say. You know what I mean? That's, if you don't, then how are we gonna know? Some people say the darndest stuff when they don't care. Trust me. So thank you.
Yeah, I would piggyback off of that too. I have kind of like harped on this, and I know my council members are probably tired of hearing me say it, but from the very beginning, Muskegon has had a very large problem with our leaders, the leaders that have been around for decades, 1 or 2 decades. We have a real problem with gatekeeping, and a lot of the CBOs are siloed. I've actually took a break from the hospital system I worked for a decade, and then I went back and got my master's degree. So I actually came into this position being out of the loop. So I had to do my social capital, build my social capital back up, kind of connect with people and let them know I was back doing community outreach. And everybody is siloed now. When I first started as a CHW in 2012, it was very easily or readily available for us to get in contact with resources and other CBO leaderships and get what we needed. It's a total 360 now, and I'm not sure if that's because of COVID, but everybody is grabbing their grant money and holding it tight. I'm harping on partnerships and breaking down silos, but they like got a monkey wrench on the money and nobody wants to share, and nobody. So I'm just trying to let them know that we shouldn't have a crabs in a barrel mentality. Partnership looks a lot of different ways. It could be sharing a venue, helping somebody get food, which we've had in-kind donations and help in innovative ways from community members. But I find that I have to talk to people and educate them on what partnership could look like versus what the idea is in their head, which is hard when you're talking to people of color.
Thank you, Shoni. I see a lot of like vigorous head nodding of agreement there with your statement. Do other people want to share things that they're working on, like heading towards sustainability? I don't want to, yeah, go ahead, Pencil.
Yeah, so we're using the summit as a way to leverage to start the recognition and to really launch the sustainability. So we're putting a lot into that summit and our visibility. Especially is led by the people, driven for the people. And then inviting a lot of other people to be a part of the summit. So we see it, I see it. I am excited. And I talked to Danielle at the last minute. I said, oh, we had this wonderful meeting. It was I thought it was the best meeting we ever had. I was like, wow. And people were just taking ownership. I was like, oh, this is just like heaven. People who were quiet were, coming up. So I think that, but we have this list of people we want to actually start targeting to invest in the council long term. So I think the key is getting us on the same page of vision going forward. Right now it's been like, the summit. Now we got to figure out why are we existing? Why is the council existing for what? That's the question I keep asking. So I feel like we got to have this. So this sustainability presentation, I think helps set the stage to actually start having those conversations. But I think the energy and the synergy that's happening going towards really has gelled the council in a way that I haven't seen. I've seen sparks of it, but I felt like it just converged in this last meeting. So I thought it was great. So anyway, so this next phase, setting the stage for the next conversation, is right on time.
And just based on what Shoni was saying, what it is that I asked us to think of, is that we are aware that there is gatekeeping, and because of that gatekeeping, there's not the application to getting our community members the resources that they need. So there's all this talk about it, but there's no application. Everybody receiving funding, but nobody is applying what they said they're receiving the funding for. And so that barrier, right, is a real thing. And I think, like, in our listening sessions, what we heard is that, like, doctors need to be trained on how Black people are affected in their environment. You know what I'm saying? So, like, we can educate, these organizations, we can train. When we establish, our foundation, that funding that now is being used for training, what equity is, we can centralize that. That's how I look at it. Like, it has to come from a place that is pure and is authentic, because what we know is what we're weaving through right here in this council is the distrust, of us having one mind and people going to come in and then parachute in and fly up out of here or some sort of thing. So we got a authentic space, if you will, and it's building from that authentic space with the understanding that there needs to be training on multiple levels, you know what I'm saying? And can we develop that here? You know what I'm saying? And that's how another way we can acquire funding. I can go on to Muskegon Health Shoni easy. Like, that's what I do, you know what I mean? And so, like, utilizing the resources, you know what I'm saying, to strengthen the basis, you know what I mean? Those are sustainable things. We got it all right here.
Thank you. I see Jason brought up in the chat that Hingham County is actively going after grants as a council as a whole, had to identify roles and responsibilities. Jason, I don't know where you are, if you are able to come off mute and chat about that a little bit.
Sure. It was just a little difficult trying to identify which organization was going to do what, because as you're working with nonprofits, a lot of nonprofits wear a lot of hats and they can do a lot of things. So we had to really say, okay, CAHA will do this, and the Lansing Latino Health Alliance will provide this service. We also looked at culturally specific roles. There are some grants that may be out there that maybe target our Latino partner, Latino community. So for optics, we wanted to make sure that the lead agency is the organization that best represents that community. So, but it's just, it's an uphill battle, but you just have to figure out how to best make it work. And I know I didn't say that right, but I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. So.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the time, and I think if anyone else wants to share, we have time maybe for one more sharing. These are really great examples and a great discussion of, like, hopes and barriers.
Well, I don't know about the weather but it's storming outside. It's pouring down, and I think I have some windows open.
Yeah, you better go.
I'm like, what the heck? So
yeah, and we can let you all go. Really appreciate you being here. I hope everyone stays safe, and thank you all for your very valuable input. And again, keep it coming, because we want to hear and we want to improve and we want to give you what you need. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, y'all.